What's the worst thing you've ever heard a teacher say at school? When I was about 9, our teacher asked the class what we wanted to be when we grew up. One kid said he wanted to be a bin man, a garbage man, for US readers. The teacher went into a rant, saying that jobs like these were for the lowest, most unintelligent people in society, and that he should aspire to be better than that. Finally, she asked why he wanted to be a bin man anyway. "Because my dad's one," said the kid, by now in tears. I was always taught to never disrespect a man's livelihood unless it is dishonest. This teacher is a grass. A man's work is how he provides for himself and those dependent on him, and not a soul can judge him on that. Obviously this applies to women as well, not to mention that it is likely a high-paying job depending on where you live. The kid's dad probably made just as much money as the teacher. He probably made more money than the teacher. That's probably why the teacher spoke so strongly against it. Them bin men be making more than him. Coming from a garbage man himself, frack that teacher. My dad opened up his own sanitation company and he's way smarter than most people I've met. Garbage men's brains are like a freaking GPS too, it's crazy. Edit. I'd like to thank everyone for telling me they appreciate me and every other sanitation worker. Seriously, we hear it so little that I'm little overwhelmed with all the positive feedback. Plus, what are we gonna do without garbage men? Extremely necessary job. When I was a kid, they would make fun of my dad for being a plumber. Just dumb plunger jokes. In high school, they found out he made $150,000 a year and kids were mad because their daddies had college and worked in an office, but made less. Senior year, I got 5 friends that asked if my dad could get them into the union. Garbage men and plumbers may not be the brightest people, but our entire society relies on them. I'm a really cheap, but for years I've used plumbers as an example of someone earning whatever money they want to charge you. I might be able to go and clear that blocked pipe myself, but no way I'm going to. You do a job that needs to be done, even if it means you could end up covered in waste. You get paid whatever you want, mate. Ignore people who disrespect those who do these sorts of jobs. Both of the plumbers that I know personally are also brilliant guys. One is a former United Technologies aerospace engineer who builds motorcycles from scratch as a hobby, the other is a doctor of art history. Never judge the people doing grunt work. I don't think people understand just how tough our job is too. Especially for us private sanitation guys. We're in at 6 p.m., and sometimes we won't get out till 8 or 9 the next morning depending on the night. And it's such a dangerous job. I've seen people lose fingers and have their toes or feet crushed by falling containers. You work overnight? Must be regional differences. I've never seen a garbage truck out collecting, whether from houses or businesses, at night. Our household garbage is picked up all morning, separate trucks for garbage, recycling, and landscape waste. My 4th grade teacher, age 9 to 10 in US, would ruthlessly bash labor unions, trade unions almost every day, in between praising the Bush administration, Republicans, and the brand new Iraq War. We were talking about careers one day and he asked me in front of the whole class what my father did for a living. He quickly moved onto a different topic when I told him my dad was a union leader. Age of 9, lost my father in a horrific accident. I returned to school a few days later and after attendance was taken, the teacher said to me in front of the class got together and sent flowers to your father's funeral. I paid your share, so make sure you bring in $2 tomorrow as I need to be paid back. She then went on with the lessons. As many have asked what happened, I asked to see the school nurse and was sent home. Once home I told my mother. Returning to school 2 days later I never saw the teacher again. I don't know how my mother handled it. The frack. Same, this is just what the duck. You don't make a kid pay for his own father's funeral flowers. Also, $2. You can't spare $2 for a kid whose dad just died. Wow, teachers really are underpaid. Teacher, so will you miss the rest of this week just like last week? Me. My dad was in hospice. Sorry it took him so long. Teacher. Heart visibly sinks into stomach and face drops. At least he realized he was wrong. Ha, at least your teacher had the decency to be shamed. My school administration took me to truancy court. My elementary schooler niece is currently in trouble for truancy because she had the audacity to be hospitalized for her organ transplant rejection. I missed a week of work at my part-time job. Full-time job let me take my time because of my mom suddenly dying. I got a message saying, "When are you coming back? The show must go on." That was pretty bad to hear from a place I'd worked at for 6 years. This wasn't said directly to me, but in middle school I had a teacher grab me from the lunch table and drag me to the principal's office. After grilling me for a while and telling me I know what I did, they finally revealed to me that the teacher stated she witnessed me suggestively sucking my thumb while staring at a female friend of mine. I was just biting my nail. Did you bite your thumb at her, sir? No, sir, I bite my thumb, but not at her. Do you quarrel, sir? If you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you. No better, say better. I had something kinda similar happen. I moved from Ohio to Iowa during middle school. One day I was wearing an Ohio State Buckeyes shirt. One of my teachers grabbed me and dragged me to principal's office. When I asked what was going on, she told me I knew exactly what I did. I had no idea what she was talking about. At the principal's office she finally explained how I was wearing a marijuana t-shirt. The reason being that the Buckeyes logo is sometimes just a Buckeye leaf with or without a nut. After I quickly explained, my teacher called me a liar. Then the principal just kind of sighed and told me I could go back to class and the teacher needed to stay behind. He clearly knew I was in the right. I got a half-hearted apology from her later. In first grade, someone during a school assembly dropped a mic and the speakers made a terrifying screeching sound. When the sound finally stopped, me, sitting next to said speaker, muttered, "Thank God it's over." My first grade teacher decided that that comment was disrespectful and literally dragged me by the arm upstairs to the principal. They got very upset when I refused to apologize and admit to any wrongdoing. One day in a history class, my professor, who is at least 80 years old, was talking about bedfellows in Victorian England, and was saying how common it was for men to sleep together. He used himself as an example and said that he used to sleep with his grandfather all the time as a child. After he said that, though, he looked at the ground and said to himself, audibly, "I still wonder to this day if he molested me." Then he looked back at us, shrugged, and said, "Oh well, too late to know for sure now." It was fascinating to see someone overcome deep-seated trauma so quickly. Whoa, that's actually very dark. More like dark humor. I think he just used dark humor or something. Unlike movies, people don't tend to talk to themselves when they make sudden realizations. Also, generally speaking, teachers tell the same anecdotes every semester, so why would he have the realization during that class? Edit. I get a lot of, "I talk to myself a lot," replies. We all do in our heads, and plenty of people do talk out loud. But if you're an experienced public speaker giving a lecture in front of a crowd, you don't really drop an audible, "Wait, did I got molested?" in between your planned lines. It seems unlikely you'd say that in this situation, unless for comedic purpose. Yay. Honestly, this made me laugh just for this reason. I can't imagine this was anything other than a totally inappropriate joke. Then again, I wasn't there, so I have no idea. I lolled. He sounds like a fun teacher. Not really the worst, but once in high school my teacher legitimately asked the blind girl in our class why she wasn't going up to check her grade on the grade sheet. I have a friend with bilateral cochlear implants. That is, he was born deaf and still has less than average hearing with the implants. Well, back in high school, he was in several of my classes. Stand-up guy, really nice, yada yada. Anyway, one day, one of our teachers asks him some banal question. Here's a transcript of the following interaction. Friend. What? Teacher. Repeats question. Friend. Sorry. What? Teacher. Jokingly, what? Are you deaf or something? Friend. Yes. Teacher looks horrified. Entire class and friends start dying laughing. Teacher apologizes profusely. Luckily, she was actually a super nice lady and basically forgot my friend was, in fact, deaf without his implants. This is the thing that teacher's brain will randomly dig up at 2 a.m. for some sleepless self-cringing, forever. Sometimes I remember these types of moments while driving and I have to let out a short "ah" because "ah." Joke's on you, the teacher had her grade written in Braille. Like they just printed out the dots in ink, and not raised at all. Amazing how often this occurs, apparently. Or it's done correctly, but someone puts it behind a protective barrier. Really, as a blind guy, I've never seen this happen. She probably didn't mean to be mean. I once had a blind man ask me if I could show him the door at the train station and I pointed and said, "Of course, it's right over there." Fully knowing he was blind. Sometimes your brain just tricks you. Whoever threw that paper, your mom's a hoe. That's great. As a former teacher, great way to divert the attention back onto yourself. Funny, offensive. I like it. One of my college professors straight up said one day, from my experience, African American students tend to drop my class the most. It's probably too hard for them. Any of you notice how we haven't seen that one black chick who used to sit in the front row for weeks now? Guy was immediately shot down when the black chick raised her hand from the back row saying she'd been here the whole time. She just moved to the back row cause that's where her boyfriend was sitting. I wonder if Rosa Parks would have gone to the back of the bus if her boyfriend was there. I may be wrong, please correct me otherwise, but wasn't the Rosa Parks thing because she was at the front of the black part of the bus and she was asked to move further back as a white man wanted her seat? Or did she literally go and sit right up front? Just want to know as I have heard both versions and want to be sure. I guess they are dropping out because he is racist. Quite the opposite, he doesn't even see color, that's why he didn't notice her in the back row. Congratulations, you're a marriage of Dumbos made in heaven. I had a teacher in elementary school who after every test would pick the lowest scoring girl and lowest scoring boy in the class and force them to hold hands, perform a brief marriage ceremony on them in front of the laughing class without the kissing part obvs, and have all the other kids sing, "Here Comes the Bride." Then she'd have the two kids sit together at the side of the classroom for rest of the lesson, and they weren't allowed to stop holding hands until bell rang. The answer is yes. That did happen to me. 3 weeks was about how long the teasing lasted, and 6 years was roughly how long me and the groom avoided speaking to each other after that out of residual humiliation. Edit. This was around the early 2000s. I'm not from the US, I didn't tell my parents, I honestly didn't think it was such a honking huge giant deal. Kids get punished all the time, right? I'm from a culture where teachers are considered authority figures to be respected, so no adult would have defended us unless I was being physically hurt or something, probably. I'm surprised so many of you are so outraged on my behalf. You're sweethearts. I'm not permanent scarred by this, just kinda salty. Can't speak for the other kids affected though, but after a day's worth of angry crying nobody seemed overly traumatized. Most important edit. Did it work? Were you a better student from then on? Did you studiously avoid getting the lowest grade in class? No. That is insanely fracked up. It's sadistic in its level of cruelty. I swear that there's a small minority of teachers who do the job because they love torturing kids and it gives them the power to do so. When I grew up and went to school there were certain teachers who would hurt the children any way they could. By pouring their derision on anything they did, exposing every weakness however well hidden by the kids. I wish they would just leave them kids alone. Seems to me like you have a very toxic relationship with your husband. I recommend you two get couples counseling, cause 6 years is a heck of a long time. Not the worst ever, but it really fracked with me. There are literally millions of other cute little Chinese girls just like you that are much better than you and can replace you. Edit. For context, I study animation and am also Chinese. I was asking my teachers for advice on how to get better at drawing faster, as I wasn't very happy with my skill level and was stressed about being left behind by my peers. Most of my teachers were very supportive but obviously not all of them lol. I did work very hard to spite him, though, and did get a scholarship from it. You just can't break my spirit. I go to school in the US, and he happened to be a white male teacher, but there are mean people from every race and gender. And good people say bad things sometimes, too. Thank you for all the support less than 3. And for others asking about when I said this was not the worst ever, I meant that other people have probably heard worse from teachers, I guess haha. Seeing how anyone, gestures to teacher, can become a teacher these days, you can be replaced easily too. Edit. I didn't mean this seriously. Apology to the hardworking, dedicated teachers out there. Well, to be fair, that is probably true for all of us. If a million little Chinese girls look like me, then I have a wholly incorrect view of the racial and gender makeup of China. My science teacher in 7th grade called a Mexican kid in my class a fence hopper once during the middle of class. In the same vein, I had a high school teacher that nicknamed everyone. His name for my friend from Syria was Green Card. My culinary teacher in high school did this. He straight up called me Pablo, even though that wasn't my name simply because I was Hispanic. He called the Middle Eastern kid terrorist and the redneck kid NASCAR. I wish I was joking. Okay, as someone from a family of rednecks, NASCAR is pretty funny. We had a huge influx of Hispanic kids in 5th grade. There was a lot of cultural tension from the adults, though us kids really didn't care all that much. Anyway, one of the teachers insisted on calling all the Hispanic kids anglicized versions of their names. Example, Juan would be John. There was one girl named Rosa Linda and she insisted we all just call her Linda because Rosa isn't an English name. Edit. Anglicized, not Americanized. Got it. That teacher had obviously never heard of Rosa Parks. Which is probably true considering the level of racism in that whole encounter. I just wish I was freaking dead. Overheard by complete chance while wandering the corridors during a free period. Turned right back around and took the long route so I wouldn't have to walk past the classroom. It was a bit of a broken pedestal moment for me, but I never told anyone else about it. The teacher who said it was one of our most beloved history teachers, who we later found out had been stopped from committing suicide at least twice by one of the deputy heads who'd been friends with him since their university days in the past. Not stopped as in, talked things out and convinced him it wasn't the best way to deal with his problems, but as in, physically picked up and dragged away from the window. He, the deputy head, was quite intimidating as a teacher, but we gained a lot of respect for him after learning that. Darn. When I was a senior in high school I had a teacher tell me that if I wanted to kill myself I had to follow the highway, not cross it, while making cutting motions. My 6th form tutor told us the same thing. He used to work as a counselor for recovering drug addicts and had had patients commit suicide. Now that I think about, I do hope he didn't give his patients this advice. This is so fracked. Ding ding ding, we have a winner. Male teacher was talking about the dress code to me and a friend of mine during lunch. He stated he doesn't like seeing a bunch of fatties in short shorts, but then gestured towards a thin girl in short shorts walking up the step and said, but that I don't mind. That's wrong for several different reasons. First and foremost, it's just plain rude to point at people. Had a girl at my school get in huge trouble for her dress one day. It didn't break the dress code on her, and another girl was wearing the exact same dress and it did break it for her. The girl in trouble asked why she was the one being disciplined. Because she looks good in it. When I was in high school, a gym teacher came up to me one day towards the end of class when everyone was just kind of freely shooting basketballs and hanging out on the bleachers. I was standing by myself, and walked up and asked me something about the neighboring town. He said, "Did you know that in Olney, they used to hang black people with velvet?" And then just walked away. It was the only time he ever talked to me. I'm white and he was a black guy, maybe 6'8". I think he was in the NBA for one season or something. Everyone loved him so I guess he was just messing with me, but he got me pretty good. Was this the same teacher who regularly said, "I didn't get off the slave ship yesterday"? No, it's the one who would say stuff like, "Oh, hey, tell your mama I said Saturday is fine. You're still going to a friend's this weekend, right? Olney MD, full of deathclaws now." Okay, I have one. When I was in elementary, I got confused at lunchtime and threw my food out early and wandered outside for recess. Alone. Realizing my mistake and having no idea what to do, I went back inside and told a lunch lady and asked what I should do. She dragged me by the arm to the center of the lunchroom with a live mic and informed everyone of my mistake and how no one should do what I did because it was a bad thing. She told everyone I was going to get expelled. I was sobbing at that point. I kept asking her what expelled meant but she didn't answer me. All I knew was that it was a bad thing. I never told my mom until years later. And no, I didn't get actually expelled. Lunch ladies, in my experience, are either some of the nicest, most caring women you will ever meet or just straight up old hags. Yeah, my mom's a lunch lady and she would agree with this. This sounds like a deleted scene from Matilda. I mean, who gives a lunch lady a live microphone? Grabs mic, and what's the deal with cafeteria food? Wait, what did you do wrong? Admitted fault. Rookie error. It's impossible to rape a male. If he gets an erection, he wanted it. From a middle school government teacher. So, by that logic, a woman isn't raped if she gets wet and/or has an orgasm. I'm pretty sure people believe that as well. Next day tabloids headline, 45-year-old male teacher raped by students after claiming men can't be raped. Quote from Man Raped. FTFY. In the state of California, it is impossible to rape a male according to law. You can sexually assault a male. The definition of rape is to forcibly penetrate a vagina without consent. Males do not have a vagina, therefore they cannot legally be raped. Even if another male rapes them in the ass, according to California state law, it is not rape. This is charged with PC 243.4 sexual battery and PC 289 forcible penetration with a foreign object. This is also why a male can be charged with statutory rape while a female cannot. A male teacher having sex with a female student is PC 261.5 statutory rape, while a female teacher having sex with a male student is PC 647.6 annoying or molesting a child. If the minor was under 15, both would get PC 288 lewd acts with a child. Annoying or molesting a child is a very broad law. I got your nose, I got your nose. Calls 911. My 8th grade science teacher would pick on this one girl in the front row. One time he was going to make a joke about her breath being so bad he could see it. Instead he said, "I can see your breasts," to a 14-year-old girl. My history teacher called himself Big Daddy. Edit. It is a little alarming to me how many people have had teachers call themselves the same thing. My history teacher called me the door beach because I let students into the class. My HS Gov teacher told me I was faking an autoimmune illness and that I'd never make it anywhere with my laziness. She was trash. Edit. I was not faking it. I had medical documentation to back me up. I am now nearly finished with my BS in biology and headed to med school next year after surgery. My school nurse sophomore year of high school thought I was faking illness to get out of gym class, my favorite class. Turns out I had undiagnosed Crohn's that got worse and worse through the year until I could barely walk without exhaustion. Hey, I have Crohn's too. But I once had a teacher that told me I didn't have rheumatoid arthritis because I was too young. I was like, well, that's not what my doctor said, and she replied, well, doctors will say anything for you to come back. My friend had to stop me from saying anything as she could see how mad I was. I always got yelled at in front of class if I missed her class due to illness or doctor appointments. I still got an A but geez. But a lot of my teachers said something about missing all the time for doctor appointments. Ended up missing about 200 days but still graduated with a 4.1 GPA. Like grown adults would say things about me to other students for missing their class. Sorry, I went on a rant, but it was frustrating. How dare you write that? You're practically emotionally handicapped. It's psychopathic. Said to me at 12, not even half a year after my mom died. She made us write an essay about our home life, which in retrospect was an excuse to snoop into my situation, and didn't like how I used humor to cope, so she pulled me out of the class to yell at me for 5 minutes for not being sad enough. I don't even remember what I wrote besides cracking some jokes about my dad's outfits. My best friend lost her dad to cancer when she was 12, and her mom taught her to use humor to cope. She likes to tell people he died and then ask them if they want to see a picture of her and her dad, and then she shows them a picture of her smiling next to his tombstone. Her mom died in February. They cremated her, put her in a wine bottle, and threw her at the Las Vegas sign. We make jokes about how silly she was. Probably the best way to cope with death is laugh at it. I hope someone throws a pickle jar of my ashes at the Seattle gum wall. Mrs. Newdell, my 3rd grade math teacher. 1987. I missed 2 weeks of school due to a horrible case of chickenpox and fell behind with whatever it was that we were working on. A month after I came back to school, I was still struggling with math, but was too young and scared to ask for help. We had a test that I failed. So, Mrs. Newdell brought my 3rd grade self up to the front of the classroom and shamed me. She told the entire classroom that, Buffy who will never succeed in math. I ended up crying and going to the nurse with a stomach ache. I'll never forget how awful she was to me, and I struggled with math for the rest of the time that I was in school. That's terrible, and not at all what a teacher should do. I was taking lessons to be a teacher, and one of the first things we learn is if we find a student like this, then we should find a way to get them caught up. Not to punish them. This is especially true for subjects that build on themselves linearly, like math. As Opp pointed out, gaps in knowledge have a way of snowballing out of control, if not corrected early. Wood shop teacher telling an Asian kid he doesn't really need to wear a face shield on the lathe. You know, because of the eyes. He meant it as a joke, but even at 15 we all kind of hushed and looked at each other like, dude, did he just say that? Safety squint. Just because I'm on a diet doesn't mean I can't look at the menu. Priest in a Catholic high school, after he was caught looking down a girl's shirt. Dude. Not all Mexicans are from Mexico. Some are from El Salvador. BCOM professor. She's not that Mexican, Mom, she's my Mexican. And she's Colombian or something. I know it's the last day of term, but we will be working right up to the bell. That is stone cold. Chemistry teacher that got annoyed easily with my class specifically. All right, frack this, you're all going to fail this exam. People in my class would never shut up, and it was the last week of school, so he was just done with us. To be honest, I can understand the teacher. I was in pretty much the same situation. One year our class was so bad, the teacher left after that year to go to another school in another city. Edit. Words. In tryouts for the school's annual Christmas play, the teacher directing the production denied the most talented and well-suited student the part of playing the Virgin Mary, because the girl was black. The teacher said the play would be criticized if a black girl were allowed to play the Virgin because everyone knows that Mary was white, as God intended. Ah yes, all those white people in Palestine and Egypt, truly God's chosen ones. Edit. Guys, I get it, Mary was from Nazareth. A teacher told the story of when he was working at a girls' summer camp. The showers had broken down and he had to go fix it for the girls who were mid-shower. They had the girls put their faces to the walls for some reason. Naked bums all along the walls. He told it as if it was a funny anecdote. I was creeped out and can't imagine how the girls who were going to said camp felt about the story. What the frack? Might I reiterate? What the frack? Allow me to reinforce. What the actual frack? The girls couldn't get out temporarily to be fixed. Like that was their better solution. Paraphrasing slightly, but there's no such thing as Asperger's syndrome. This is just attention-seeking behavior. Said to me, about me. Admittedly, this was over 20 years ago, when not everybody had heard of it, but still. I'd had 2 days of tests and brain scans resulting in a long-form diagnosis, explanation which my parents had shared with my teachers. Every other teacher basically reacted with, "Oh, so that's why he's so weird. Okay, we can work with this. But not this guy." Used to have an alcoholic teacher who, when handing out textbooks, slammed one down in front of a larger boy in our class, pointed at him and said, "Don't eat it." Yeah, the kid cried. As a fat guy who was once a chubby to fat kid, I laughed. Then again, I also voted myself as most likely to raid the refrigerator in the 8th grade yearbook. My 4th grade music teacher told us to shut the frack up. She got fired. I taught for a while and there were times I was dangerously close to doing something similar. I'm the other side of the coin. I managed to irritate my PE teacher so much he called me a fraking knobhead and hit me with a cricket ball. My PE teacher threatened to shove a javelin up a kid's arsehole. My PE teacher called me a useless fat tosser, so I stole the wipers PFF his car. You are incompetent, terrible, boy who has no decency and will never amount to anything in your life. I'll be surprised if you're even capable of finishing this year, let alone school. Very damaging to 9-year-old me. Man, that girl has some jacked up teeth. He said it about one of my friends who had cancer and had half of her jaw removed. I told the principal. The teacher admitted he said it and then I got kicked out of school. How is it that you get kicked out? Who knows? The principal pulled me into his office and the teacher was there. They yelled at me until I cried. He was yelling about how I could have made him lose his job and how selfish it was of me, couldn't I keep a secret? He said it in front of a class of 30 with as soon as my friend left the room. He's still teaching, and that was 12 years ago. I thought I did the right thing, but what do I know? You did do the right thing. You stood up for your friend. You were in the right. Shut the frack up. I am better than God. Not the same teacher. Your mother should have swallowed you, not to me, but the kid had that coming. Had that coming. When I was 12, my teacher said my knitting had too many errors in it, it had 4, and ripped it to shreds. I was supposed to start all over again but excused myself and went to the bathroom where I cried for the rest of the lesson. One time we were drawing this part of a photo we saw in art class with a pencil and paper, and my friend wasn't very good at drawing, so the art teacher took it from him and yelled something along the lines of it being a really bloody bad drawing and crumpled it up in front of him and the whole class. This was in grade 5 or 6, and of course, my friend was bawling his eyes out. Now, gentlemen, uncomfortable pause, under breath. Oh, Right, they let girls in now. And ladies. Good save, teach. Good save. I remember when in the last years of high school I was the only male in the class and teachers would jokingly refer to us as girls and boy. I was literally the only guy in my chorus class one year. Not only were those kinds of jokes constantly made, but the teacher would get mad at me for being too quiet. I'm sorry that my single voice isn't louder than over 30 girls. In UK, year 11, age 15/16. An English literature teacher once told my class, "Polar bears almost exclusively eat penguins." I was not good at literature, but I was good at science subjects, and I was not this teacher's favorite pupil. So when she said this, I quite quickly argued back, saying that she was wrong. She protested and I explained that polar bears live in that Arctic Ocean and, while there are various species of penguin, none of them live in the northern hemisphere. This was an open argument during class and she offered to Google the answer. So she did, and when I was proven correct by the internet, she sent me out the class. As a teacher, this infuriates me. If a kid proves me wrong, I openly admit it and give them kudos for doing it. Throwing a kid out because they stood up for what they know is right because you're too insecure to let a teenager prove you wrong is the kind of thing that makes kids hate school. Just cheat on the test if you have to. The thread clearly says worst, not best. I was a metalhead with long hair. In the 9th grade, my algebra teacher, who was working on his 3rd DUI, told me that I'd OD before I ever graduated. I sent him an invite to my graduation. I mentioned how I hadn't OD'd. He no-showed. But one of my other teachers came, told me what an grasshole that guy was, and that he'd be sure to ask him why he couldn't make the graduation. Just to rub it in a little. That was really cool of your other teacher. When I was in 6th grade, the second election for Bush Jr. was coming around and they were teaching us about political parties, and being a kid I asked which political party I belonged to because as a kid with no prior knowledge I wanted to know if I had one. My teacher then proceeded to tell the class that everyone as in must be a Republican or will burn in the fiery pits of hell, with the dirty no morals having Democrats. Turns out you don't go to hell for not being a Republican. Well, you're still alive, how would you know? I am a teacher's aide. A student said to me last week that I'm like his dad, never around to help, and when I am I'm useless. I responded with, "You're making me realize why he left." Disclaimer: I have a good relationship with this student and this kind of humor is appreciated by him. My brother had a friend whose mother had died the day before, but he still went to school for some reason. He walked into the class late or something and the teacher asked jokingly, "Did your mum die?" He just said, "Yeah, she did," and left. My theater teacher in high school told me I was too fat to act unless I played the fat idiot sidekick, would never be in a musical, and that I wouldn't make it in the world of theater. About a year later, her husband cast me in a musical and one other show because he really liked me. All of her comments for the 4 years I was in high school really messed me up and made me rethink wanting to do theater, which is one of my only passions. I'm glad I stuck with it and continued on through my senior year even though she was still awful to me. I had a teacher stand me up in front of the class and have them say, "Stupid," in unison. That really did a lot for my 5th grade self-esteem, especially considering my dad was in rehab at the time and the reason I was called stupid was I lost my homework at said rehab visiting him. Joke's on her though, I am an accomplished scientist today despite that terrible chain of events. This one English teacher at my school once told a black kid to read a passage in some slavery novel to read it blacker. It got on the news and she eventually just quit. She also moved into my apartment building and I occasionally run into her, which is pretty funny. Biology teacher told a white girl who liked tanning beds, "If you get any darker they will make you sit at the back of the bus." Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe.